All right, in this segment we're going to be doing the seam work on this. And it built up really, really good last week, and I was really surprised because I had had this model when I was a kid, and I kind of didn't build it because it was, I thought, going to be a lot of work. So here I am as an adult building it, and it's going together really fast. And so basically what I'm going to do is, with all plastic kits, when you glue it together, and if you remember last week I used a lot of glue, so I have this seam here, but the seam sticks out. It's not like an inseam, so I don't have to putty this whole thing up. I put enough glue in it to keep a bead on there. So I'm going to take my knife here, and I'm just going to scrape the seam down. I'm just going to go here, and I'm going to use the sharp end of the blade. And it's best to use a sharp knife. If you use a dull one, it'll start chunking things out, and you'll have big gouges in there, and it just won't look as good. And this way you can kind of cut where the boot is too, and if you can see, it's pretty much taking care of the seam altogether. I kind of give it a couple scrapes around the sides to give it a roundness to it, but I don't even have to putty that part up. I might take a little sandpaper, and I did bring some sandpaper, and this is good for dry or wet. You just get a little wet in there, and you get it, and sand it down a little bit, and it'll have a nice uniform seam on there. You won't even know it's there, and that's kind of the whole plan on the seam work stuff. I don't have a lot to putty on this. I have a couple spots like here in the arm, and maybe in the head. I might have one little spot up here, but again, this went together really good. So all I got to do is kind of scrape it down, and luckily they put it with the hair, so it's, you know, it's just another piece of hair. So I'm going to go like that. With the seaming, or with the putty work, I tend to use AVs, so I'm just going to show you how I quickly will clean up a plastic kit. So if you can see there, even I might have taken one or two strands of hair when I cleaned it, so I'm just going to take my knife blade and I'm just going to come back down the hairline and just kind of let the knife go where it wants to. Because it's hair, it doesn't want to be straight, and it doesn't need to be real neat. So I'm just going to take some lines in there, and when I paint it, it's going to get pretty uniform. Just like that. And I guess I don't need any. I thought I was going to need some for right up there, but it came out rather nicely. I'm just going to take my blade and I'm going to add a couple hairlines, and a little more detail will make it look a little nicer when it's completely finished. And since we're doing the building segment, what I thought I'd do is, after this segment, I'm probably going to call this thing done. I'll scrape some more up after we go away, and but that's really all I'm going to do to clean this up, is just scrape the seams, add maybe a little detail. Well, that's pretty good for the head. The head's all done. So now I'm just going to spend the next probably hour maybe just kind of going over the seams, and luckily it worked out really well with the glue. And a lot of that's practice. I've been doing this for so long that I just naturally take a thicker bead of glue along the whole thing, squeeze them together, it kicks out a little seam, and then when it dries, the seam isn't as big, and you just can scrape it right off. And then you really don't have to do any putty work at all if you're lucky. But usually you'll always find this one spot. So I'm going to show you this one spot I have here in the arm. I have this one little crack up there. So I'm going to take some of the two-part, and it comes in two parts. And one's a darker gray and one's a lighter gray. The darker gray is the modeling compound. The lighter gray, I think, is the hardening compound. And I could be just backwards on that, but that doesn't matter. So you take the two parts and you mix them together until they're one uniform color. And Chris will go into depth with this, and oops. And this stuff goes a real long way. I've had these containers for a long time, and I've borrowed some out and given some away. And all I'm going to do is stick it right in there, and it needs to be done on both sides. I'm going to stick it right in there and spread it out. Get my finger wet. Just plain water works with this really, really well. And I use a lot of pressure on it, and stick it away, get it right in that crack, and it fills it right up with no need for sanding or anything. So that's all done already. If along the edge, if I find a gap, and I know we talked about this a lot in the past, when you're taking a model off the sprue, and if you twist it, it's going to take some of your original model off. And that's where you're going to need this stuff to fill up those holes. I'm going to just spend some more time scraping and scraping. The base looks pretty good, and I'm going to end up having to scrape along here, but again, there's a nice bead of glue on it, so I don't really have to worry about it. I could put some putty in this crack if I wanted to, but since it's a ground crack, I'm going to be painting this, and I can just kind of thick some paint in there too. Paint on itself, the acrylic paint, can be kind of thick, so I can just take it, put it in there rather thickly with a black, and then when I do my dry brushing, it'll usually all hide up. The rest of this model just puts together very easily, and a lot of this I'll assemble while I'm painting it.